the old bucket over the door trick.
Yeah.
It's Home Alone. Gonna have a spider,
like
and then he's gonna have he's gonna heat up the door handle. Hey, Internet. It's Paul. It's Matt. The Dork Lords. We are here talking about Good Omens, episodes 3 and 4, known as Hard Times and Saturday Morning Funtime. So, what we've got here for these two episodes is we begin with maybe one of the longest cold opens you ever see, which was actually really, really cool, of Aziraphale and Crowley through history.
Yes.
And we end, so a giant flashback essentially, and we end with, I believe, the apocalypse is just a couple hours away, and Sergeant Shadwell, Michael McKean, has confronted Aziraphale, Michael Sheen, and tried to banish him, and successfully does so, because Aziraphale accidentally steps into this circle and zips up to heaven after saying, so that's what we're talking about. Bing, 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 right in here. So episodes 3 and 4. Before I launch in, any overall thoughts on these two episodes?
I'm going to be struggling to remember.
Okay, because it's been a while since you watched it. I'm going to catch you up then.
Yeah.
I'll say this. Episode 3 was awesome. I loved the flashback in particular. The Crowley and Aziraphale's relationship through time. And we got to see it grow and change. Just great stuff.
And that was the thing that had a moment of curiosity for me, where it was like Aziraphale was in danger of being killed.
Right, he's in the French Revolution,
yes.
And he's been told he's been using too many miracles. He's been, censured for it, so he doesn't want to miracle himself out. Which is it's interesting because, as we see him in modern day, there's that bit in maybe episode 1 or 2 where he's doing the magic show for the kids, but he refuses to actually use. So he's like a really crappy practical magician, but he's like, no, I'm not using any miracles to do this. So we kind of see the origins of that maybe back here, where he apparently used too many miracles, and then people were censoring him for it. He's like, no, I'm not sure what he was gonna do, frankly. I mean, we don't know. Short of using a miracle, it seemed like he was a few minutes from having his head chopped off.
Yeah, I mean, he's saying
he said paperwork, right?
Yeah, so I guess
he would just his body would go back,
sent back, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, so it wasn't a deadly as much as a annoying bureaucratic problem. Yeah. But yes, so what was your point on that? Was just
seeing the parameters of their existence. That's all. So, it's like one thing you do want to have in a show is stakes. So. The stakes of being dead as opposed to doing paperwork are sort of different, but it's like certainly it affects the plot in order to now I can die, or
right, now I can be taken off the board,
right. And it's not a terrible thing because they're not real people.
And so this flashback, I don't know, 25, 30 minutes, something like that. It was a long period of time before they then ran the opening credits, which I thought was kind of fun.
Oh, and the other thing that occurred to me was regretting not being more familiar with Shakespeare. I don't know where the play that he was talking about figured in his works.
Oh, you're talking, they were doing Hamlet, obviously.
Yeah.
Right. And so he was just saying, I don't like the depressing ones, I like the comedies better.
Right, but it was kind of seemed to suggest that it wasn't that popular, or it wasn't
right.
that popular.
Oh, right. So the idea being, I think, I don't know, good point. I don't know this for a fact. I have a feeling Hamlet was a fairly well-received play at the time, but maybe, I think the implication was it wouldn't have been if not for Crowley doing a miracle, because it was so depressing that no one was going to watch it. But he miracled it into popularity. So that's it.
So
we got a demon working for you.
If I had a greater understanding of Shakespeare, I might have, I'm sort of like, did he need a miracle?
Good point. Oh, you mean the most successful play of all time? That one?
All the previous plays before those sucked.
Yeah. Right. Good. Yeah. How much of a miracle is it when you're like, oh wow, the play everybody reads? But yeah, I think that's the idea, is that it wouldn't have been perhaps, if he didn't stick to his comedies, and he did a tragic thing that ended up being popular.
So it's like I don't know Shakespeare.
Sure, right.
Is that his first play?
If you out there have some Shakespeare Easter eggs in there, drop them
out of the box with Hamlet. I don't know.
He did not come out of the box with Hamlet.
I'm working on a little something. I don't know.
I mean, there were a lot of great moments in it. One was they're at the flood's about to happen, and so there's Noah's Ark, and the animals are going, and it's like Aziraphale's trying to subtly, because there's a lot of people around, kind of talk to he's gonna kill everyone. Yeah, it's gonna be a big flood. Yes, so, well, just the locals. It's like just the local, not everyone in Australia. He's like, what do you mean, like kids? It's like, we don't question, and so it becomes the demon is actually offended by what God is supposedly going to be doing in this moment. Yes. And so we see that this relationship is fluid in a way, a bit, where there's, the bad guys can question the good guy and actually be, somewhat morally justified in that questioning, and vice versa. Crucifixion of Jesus, and then there's the bit where it's like, well, what has he done? It's like, well, he was just saying everybody should be happy. It's like, oh, well, that'll do it. Be kind to one another. That was it. That'll do it. With just some really interesting observations about religion. It felt meaning of lifey in some of those moments.
Of course. Or history of the world.
That too. Aziraphale is being questioned about what he did with the sword. Yes. Because that's obviously an important item that he has misplaced. Well, he didn't misplace it. He gave it away. He keeps insisting it was misplaced. Yeah. So anyway, I think episode 3 is such a favorite of mine because it focuses on those two guys and their relationship, and it's awesome and it's great. And so I wasn't as thrilled with episode 4, in part, I think, because those two guys don't really get to interact in that episode, and they have a lot of, like Crowley keeps basically coming up to Aziraphale. They find reasons for him to meet and go, hey, let's go away together, or hey, let's do a thing, let's work together. Right. And Aziraphale keeps saying, nope. And so it's like the story is pushing them away temporarily. I assume it's going to, it does bring them back together. I assume, based on the book, I assume they're going to come back. But so it was a little like, oh, my two favorite guys aren't hanging out in this episode. There was a lot happening. I mean, episode 4 is the push the plot majorly. I mean, it's almost. I'm not going to go plot by plot point because it would take forever. So I feel like episode 4 was maybe, of the 4 episodes so far, maybe my least favorite, just because it does keep Aziraphale and Crowley at opposite ends. I don't know. Did that occur to you at all? Was that a thought?
I mean, while they have many scenes together, there's a lot of stuff that happens when they're apart. So for me, it wasn't. I don't have the same attachment, I think, perhaps to them as a group. Okay. As you do. I liked some of the stuff that was happening separately. Especially like the scenes with Aziraphale and Gabriel. So that they're never in a scene with.
That's true.
With Crowley, so
because there's kind of a surreptitious relationship.
Have the devil there.
Yeah. Well, that was interesting. I did like.
Probably.
There's this scene where. First, when Crowley has to go into a church to save Aziraphale in World War II, he's like, he's constantly coming in there to save his buddy. But then, there's a kind of a really touching scene almost where Crowley's saying, all right, look, this end of the world's coming at some point. I want some kind of insurance. I would like holy water so that I can basically commit suicide should the worst come. And Aziraphale's like, I can't do that. Can't give you holy water. Finally, he relents, gives him a thermos of holy water, which we then see Crowley use to kill off one of his demon cohorts. Yes. The old bucket over the door trick. It's Home Alone. Gonna have a spider, and then he's gonna have he's gonna heat up the door handle.
I like the bit where they were going through the phone cables, cell phone.
Yeah, and he traps Hester in a answering machine tape.
Yes.
Which do they do answering machine tape? I mean, that's ancient technology, but he's still using it apparently. In this
something I saw Neil Gaiman say. We was talking about like the only person who doesn't have a cell phone is Aziraphale because he's always behind the thing. So he would only get a cell phone. Neil Gaiman was saying once everybody's gone on to whatever's next. So then he would get into cell phone.
I did like the version of the cell phones in heaven, where we saw the one angel talking on this like clear thing, and then she blows on it to turn it off. She's like, I was like, ooh, cell phones in heaven are cool. But yeah, heaven starts to suspect, and they have pictures now of Aziraphale hanging out with Crowley. They just never bothered to look before. But now they have reason to suspect. But obviously, with the apocalypse coming, it's almost kind of a who cares thing. But and so there's this sense of their relationship is illicit, but they do care about each other. But here, as we get to the end times, they have to stop, or at least Aziraphale can't trust Crowley. He can't impart to him all the wisdom because there is this sense of the sides. And Gabriel's like, hey. You can't win a war if you don't fight it. That's what we're fighting. We're not trying to avoid a war. We're trying to fight and win the war, which is not what Aziraphale wants. Aziraphale wants to avoid the war. And I feel like...
You think that Crowley wants to fight the war?
I don't know that Crowley wants to fight it. He definitely wants to avoid it, but I think it's for different reasons, maybe. I get the feeling that Aziraphale... maybe I'm wrong here, but I feel like Aziraphale wants to avoid it because he sees the destruction of humanity that would occur.
Yeah.
I think Crowley wants to avoid it because he likes his life, and he doesn't want to lose that life he's got. A little more maybe hedonistic reasons, but maybe not, because we do see how appalled Crowley is about, for instance, the flood. I mean, he's the one that's like, "What? You're going to kill kids? Yay!" Yeah. And he's a fallen angel. And
I think certainly at some point in the series, I'm not sure if it's happened, but I feel as if it has. But he said that he's kind of fallen in the wrong crowd.
Yeah, I liked his I didn't fall. I just transgressed gradually downward. That was a good line. So I'm not. That's a good point. What are the reasons for avoiding it? Maybe they both have the exact same reason. I just felt like maybe there's a little difference in there. And so we see Crowley trying to figure out what planet to go to that he can escape to. It's like, oh, okay, go demons on other planets. And I think the reason it's called Saturday Morning Funtime is because of the cartoon that he's watching in a movie theater.
Okay.
I know it could be wrong, but it's like he's watching these bunnies. And then the bunnies turn into the demons. They're having a conversation with him because they seem to always talk to him through the media, through the radio or whatever. And so it's these bunnies killing themselves and there's blood everywhere. That's a good cartoon.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, family fun.
Family fun. So you've got the bit obviously where the warlock, the kid who's actually not the Antichrist, but everybody thinks is the Antichrist. Is brought to the plains of Megiddo to start the apocalypse, and Hester the demon is there, and he's like, "Where's the dog?" And that's where they start to realize that something's amiss. Meanwhile, Aziraphale tried to impart the idea that something's amiss to the higher ups, while still trying to protect himself.
Yeah.
So they catch on. It takes them a while to catch on, but eventually now both sides realize, oops, we don't have the Antichrist. This war is not taking place. Where the hell is the Antichrist? And meanwhile, you've got obviously the witch finders, Sergeant Shadwell, and obviously it was interesting because they set that up with Aziraphale's got his people, and then Crowley's got his people. It turns out it's the same people. It's like the witchfinders are, they go in the name of Christ, but they're doing pretty horrible things to people.
He only turns on him because he sees something about
Right, he thinks you're in league with the devil.
Yeah.
He didn't realize he's actually speaking to the voice of God, like literally the most holy thing he's ever seen in his life. He misinterprets it as devil. Yeah. The Witchfinders work for both sides. Yeah, so meanwhile, you've got obviously the kids, Adam and the kids, them are hanging out in Tadfield, and the kid has met Anathema Device, the witch. She's unknowing, by the end of this episode, she's figured it out because Newton Pulsifer tells her. But until then, she's not aware. I like the bit where she did. She's like, I can read auras, but I can't read your aura. And then the voiceover, Frances McDormand's voiceover is, you can't. It's like when you're in whatever Times Square, you don't realize you're in America. Because the aura's so big that you're not seeing it. So then it shows a map, and the map has the aura going across. She meets up with him. She gives him these magazines, kind of like odd science facts, those kind of things, and he takes them in. And now we see that he has this ability to basically make real whatever he's thinking. And luckily, most of the things he's thinking are not at this moment horribly dangerous,
definitely
which
not.
they probably would have been had he been brought up by the wrong people.
Yes, exactly.
And so he basically gets rid of nuclear reactors, or he replaces them with little candies that still provide all the power. It's like through candy power. He creates an alien with a spaceship. He creates these tunnels with the Tibetans who are digging tunnels to listen in on humanity. All this stuff's going on. Very, very just crazy, absurdist stuff happening. And he starts to. By the end of this episode, he's turning evil, essentially, or he's like, we can rule the world, and he's hovering above his friends, and he's forcing his friends to sit and listen to him, and they're like, we don't like this anymore, let us go. So, it's looking desperate in that way, that this kid can't be talked down in some way from his spiraling out of control. Obviously, Newton, Pulsifer, and Anathema Device have a sexual encounter. It's kind of like, the world's ending, hell with it, I've never kissed a girl thing. Which again, because their families,
and it was foretold.
And it was foretold. So she's up with the prophecy. She's like, all right, it's what it says.
That's what it says. I got to do what it says.
So it is interesting. She lost the book, but she still got all the prophecies. So in some ways, losing the book wasn't that big a deal. When she's got this all the index cards of all the prophecies out.
Right.
So, maybe put those on a computer. I don't know. A flash drive.
I mean, if she's a good note taker, you still want to have the original source.
I know. I'm just saying, it wasn't like, I lost the book of prophecies. Well, we're screwed because I don't know what they are. She knows what they are. Aziraphale is now theoretically unwillingly up in heaven. He was given this, hey, we'll leave the gate open for you. You want to get out of there before the bad times happen. He wanted to stay, didn't. Zipped away. Crowley is considering escaping off-world.
Yes.
And you've got everybody is converging on Tadfield at this point. The different powers that be, I think. And Adam has gone off the rails. And so that's where we leave off.
Yes.
With episode 4. On to episodes 5 and 6, which we will talk about next time. Any final thoughts, sir?
No, because I know what's happening next. I mean, it's good. Those are good episodes.
All right. Those are good episodes.
They are.
I like it.
Yeah.
And we will be back with more on that. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you next time. Bye.